Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Enosh's DC Comics Comics Review, brought to you by Dr. Pepper, the fine people at DC Comics, and of course, the Detroit Tigers.
Wait, guys, I don't think that's how product placement works. You can't just put products in the video and expect them to pay you.
Well, that's what our friend Steve from down the street said.
Yeah, let's not do this. Let's just talk about comic books.
Very well then, but give me a Dr. Pepper.
Hey guys, Enosh here, and I am so excited that you have chosen to join me for this brand new show that we're going to be doing, reviewing DC Comics, alright? Now, some of these titles, I had meant to get to them last week and some this week, but you know what? It's been my kids' last week of school, and it's just been crazy hectic around our house, and so I'm just glad to finally get back on track, and so we're going to go over 4 titles today. We're going to go over The Flash, Rebirth. We're going to go over Batman Rebirth. We're going to go over Superman Rebirth. And we're going to go over Action Comics Rebirth, okay? So without further ado, thank you for joining me. Let's jump into our first title right now. All right, so our first title is Batman Rebirth #1. Now, this was an interesting title. I have not read Batman in a long time. I'm a huge Batman fan. I know a lot of Batman's history, and I understand all that, even though, contrary to some people's popular opinion, I know about Batman, okay? And so, reading this, it was kind of interesting, kind of jumping into a story that I didn't really know everything. Batman is fighting a criminal named the Calendar Man. I am familiar with the Calendar Man, and he regenerates himself as the calendar goes, and so he has like a winter, spring, fall, and summer, and then regenerates himself that way. There's a new character in here, not really sure of his name, and he's hanging out with Batman in this comic, and he thinks that maybe Batman, he's wondering why Batman has him hanging around so much, and he's like, you know, I don't want to be Robin, you know, you don't want me to be Robin, why am I here? And Batman says, I've got something else in mind, and he shows him this really cool kind of armored suit, very much kind of like an Arkham Knight kind of deal, but it's yellow and black, and it's armored, and so we'll have to see what becomes of that. They end up beating the Calendar Man. The Calendar Man had a plan to put some spores out into the world and to kind of change time a little bit, and so Batman holds his breath for like 6 or 7 minutes and goes underwater, and they end up defeating him. And so at the end, it's just Bruce Wayne and this other kid, and they're fighting a tree, and they're beating it up. And so, you know what? It might just be because I don't really know a lot about this story jumping in, so I'm hoping that it kind of catches my attention and I like it a little bit more as we go. I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5. It didn't really seem to reveal much, especially from the Rebirth one-shot, where at the end we get that button from the Watchman, you know, the smiley face with the blood. I was really hoping for like a little bit of continuation of that, but we didn't get any of that in this book. So I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I gave it a 3 out of 5. Did you read this comic? Let me know what you thought, okay? In the comment section, let me know what you thought of Batman Rebirth #1. All right, next up, we got something cool, and that is Flash Rebirth #1. And this is a very cool comic because this actually picks up from the Rebirth one-shot a little bit. It shows Barry just kind of going about his day, working for the police in his criminal investigation, and he's having these visions. He has a vision of Professor Zoom that comes to him and says he's going to kill everybody, and then all of a sudden he has this vision of Wally, which was actually in the one-shot, and we get to see that from a different perspective of what was going on with Barry before Wally was able to actually make contact with him. And I liked how they fleshed it out, drew it all together, tied it up really nice together, and you felt like it was a continuation of that story. And so for that, I love this book. And so then after he gets Wally out, they have an exchange. You know, they're reminiscing about things. All of a sudden, there's all these memories that have flooded back to Barry that he didn't have before, but now that Wally's there in his world, he does have them. I thought it was cool then at the end, they have a little bit of a talk about the Speed Force and about, Barry's reminded that he can actually make an outfit out of the Speed Force because he's telling Wally that he probably needs to update his suit because he's not Kid Flash anymore. And it looks like he may be getting a red suit as he moves on to the Titans comic book. And so he's going to go seek out the Titans at the end, and Barry's about his business. And I like this part too, because Barry actually catches up with Batman. So this, I would have liked to have seen a little bit of this in the Batman comic as well to kind of flesh out this story. Because at the end of this book, Barry seeks out Batman. The Flash seeks out Batman, and they're in the Batcave, and they're talking, and they're trying to solve this mystery of what has happened, because someone has taken 10 years out of the DC continuity, and it's looking like it's connected to the Watchmen, like it's connected with Dr. Manhattan, and they're still trying to figure out the button, right? And who it could be. Is it the Joker? I love Batman, just kind of throwing out theories about who it could be. He's like, I thought it was the Joker at first, but that doesn't seem right. And so it'll be really cool to see how they discover who it is that's taken this 10 years away. So, out of 5, I would actually give this a 4.5. I really enjoyed this comic. Okay, so no surprise with all of the Superman things behind me. I'm obviously a big Superman fan. A lot of you know that. And so I got to say, these next two that we're going to talk about were my favorites of the week. I mean, it was right up there with the Flash one, though. The Flash one was awesome, too. So, Superman Rebirth #1, we have the Superman from the old continuity, which was the Superman that I loved and grew up with, who fought Doomsday and all those things. And he is now coming to terms with the fact that the New 52 Superman has died. He is dead. He is gone. And one of the last things that he had asked his Lana Lang in this world to do was to make sure that he was buried with his mother and his father, Ma and Pa Kent, in Smallville. And so we catch up with Superman, kind of with old Superman. I'll say, should I say new Superman or old Superman? I'll say old Superman. He has a plan to take New 52 Superman and put him in a regeneration chamber at the Fortress of Solitude, just like what happened to him when he died back in the 90s. And I loved that callback. I loved that they were taken from that continuity, and Superman is thinking, hey, I know how to bring myself back to life. I did it once. It happened to me once. Let's do it again. And so he's actually going to the tomb in Metropolis where they have Superman, and so is Lana Lang. And they meet up and they have an exchange, and Lana has to realize that it's not her Superman, that it's this new Superman. And so they set off together. They talk about the Fortress of Solitude. Superman asks her, did your Superman have a Fortress of Solitude, someplace like that? Yes, he did. They end up going up there, and they end up discovering, that the Superman didn't have a regeneration chamber. So they end up taking him back and burying him in Smallville. I thought it was a very touching story. Really liked it. I give it a 4 out of 5. And finally, my favorite book of the week. This was awesome. I enjoyed every bit of this. When I was done reading this book, I wanted there to be more. I didn't want it to end. I wanted to see what came next. And it was really good. And of course, that's Action Comics 957, the Rebirth edition. Now, I love the fact that Action Comics has now gone back to the old numbering. So we're at 957 there. And we enter into a world where new Superman has not revealed himself yet. He's trying to still keep a low profile because he's got Lois, his wife, and his son Jonathan, and he doesn't want to be out in front of everybody. In the New 52, that Lois Lane outed Clark as being Superman, so everybody knows that Clark Kent is Superman, and he doesn't want to cause any issues that way until something happens, and that something is Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor shows up in downtown Metropolis, having pretty much staged a robbery with some guys who didn't really even know why they were there. They staged this robbery that's not really a robbery, and who comes to the rescue to save everyone? Lex Luthor, wearing kind of a mechanical suit and that has a giant S on it like Superman, and actually wearing the New 52 Superman's cape. All right, so he shows up, he's saving them, he comes out and he makes this grandiose speech on television talking about how he is now Metropolis's savior, that he is now their Superman. And this is all a plot, of course, to take advantage of the fact that Superman is dead. And we all know how Lex Luthor works. Cut to new Superman, or old Superman, who will now be the new Superman. He's at home with Lois and his son Jonathan, and they're talking, they're trying to move in. There was a great little one-off thing about how they're moving in, and their son Jonathan is just discovering his powers, and he says, you know, Dad, we wouldn't have to do all this. You know, you could have this whole house, you know, put together and all the furniture and everything put back in now that we've moved in like a minute, you know, with your speed. And I love how they tell their son, both Lois and Clark, they tell their son that, you know, even with his powers, he needs to learn to do things. Sometimes it's going to seem like the hard way, but he needs to learn to take his time, do things right, and not always rely on his powers, and just use his powers when it's needed. That's a great lesson, I think, to take away. And it's one that I hope that my kids take away. Now, my kids don't have superpowers, but the thing is to never take shortcuts, right? To do your best always. And I love that in a Superman comic, man. That's why I love Superman. That's the kind of stuff that I want. So, but this Clark, he sees the television, he sees Lex, and he gets ticked. And so what's he do? He immediately goes, shaves his beard with his heat vision. I love that. He has to take that second. Shaves his beard, man, and he's out there. He's in Metropolis, full Superman suit. He shows up, and Lex is saying, how is this possible? Where did you come from? You're not Superman. And he says, yeah, I am. And he says, no, that's impossible. And Lex says, you know, you seem a lot like him. You sound like him. You look like him. But you seem older and more confident. And we all know why that is. And so they go back and forth until Superman finally has enough. He's going to take down Lex Luthor. They have an exchange back and forth. Jimmy Olsen gets on the phone, calls Perry White back at the Daily Planet, and says, you need to get a reporter down here. Something crazy's going on. We got Superman, who we thought was dead, in a new suit, looks a little different, but he's here, and Lex Luthor, who's claiming to be the new Superman, they're fighting. All of a sudden, you see somebody running out of the office at the Daily Planet and says, I'm on it, Chief. And Perry White says, wait a second, that kind of sounded like, and it cuts away. Cut to downtown. Who shows up downtown? Clark Kent. Clark Kent in front of everybody. Now, this world, you got to remember, knows that Clark Kent is Superman. So they're trying to figure out who this guy is. How is that possible? We got Superman up here who's supposed to be dead, and Clark Kent's supposed to be Superman, and they're both here together at the same time. Now, I think that this will probably set up for somehow Superman to be able to continue his Clark Kent disguise, but we'll have to wait and see. But they fight. They're going at it. Things are happening. And then finally, the bad guys who are robbing the place, they have also been protecting kind of a pod of some kind. And all of a sudden, the pod cracks open. And who's in the pod? This guy right here. Doomsday. That's right, Doomsday. So this is this Superman's first day back on the job. And who does he have to fight? Doomsday. And that's how it ends. And I'll tell you what, man. I loved this book. This book was so awesome. It was so much fun to read. I can't wait to see. There it is right there on the last page there, Doomsday coming out. I cannot wait to see where they go next with this story. So for this week, guess what? That is a 5 out of 5, all right? So what did you think of these comics? Did you read them? What were your opinions? What are you thinking of the total Rebirth thing from DC right now as a whole? Do you like it? Are you glad that they did it now? I know a lot of people I've heard from have said that it got them back into collecting, got them recharged, and they're excited. My kids are reading it. My wife is reading it. I'm reading it. My friends are reading it. And so it's pretty cool. So leave your comments in the comments section. Let me know. And join me again for my DC Comics review. See you next time. Bye-bye.